Welcome to our deep dive into strategic domain-driven design. We're going to be looking at the problem space before we write even a single line of code. And we're dissecting some lessons from a training course on this very topic. And you're going to walk away with quite a few aha moments that will change how you think about software development.
Absolutely. And it's not just for developers, right? Anyone involved in building software, from product managers to business analysts, can benefit from understanding the principles of strategic DDD.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. What exactly is domain-driven design, and why should we even care about the strategic part?
Well, at its core, DDD is a software development approach that really emphasizes understanding and modeling the business domain. It's about speaking the same language as the business experts, creating a shared understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve.
Okay, so no more jargon. No more confusing acronyms. I think that's a win already.
Precisely. Now, the strategic part of DDD is about taking a step back, looking at the big picture, understanding the business goals, the core value proposition, and how the software we build can actually support and even drive those goals.
So it's less about the nitty-gritty of coding and more about the why behind the software.
Exactly. It's about making sure we're building the right thing, not just building the thing right.
That could save a lot of headaches down the line, I would imagine. No more building features that nobody needs.
Precisely. Now, the training course that we're diving into uses a very fascinating analogy to illustrate this point, and they compare it to SpaceX trying to get to Mars.
Oh, okay, that's a pretty epic comparison. How does space travel relate to software development?
Well, think about it. Even the most brilliant rocket scientists at SpaceX can't just start building a spacecraft without understanding fully the mission's goals. They need to know what it takes to get to Mars, what challenges they'll face, and what success even looks like.
So it's about defining the destination before you even think about the vehicle.
Exactly. And in software development, that destination is the business problem that we're trying to solve. If we don't have a clear understanding of that problem, we risk building the wrong solution, no matter how technically brilliant it might be.
Like trying to build a house without a blueprint. You might end up with something that looks really impressive, but it won't be functional or meet the needs of the people who live there.
That's a great way to put it. And this applies to all domains, not just complex ones like space exploration, right? Even a seemingly simple business, like an online bookstore, can have hidden complexities that need to be understood before we can build effective software.
Okay, so we need to define the problem, speak the business language, and understand the why behind the software. But how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
Well, that's where the core concepts of strategic DDD really come in. The first step is to identify the domain, the specific area of activity the business operates in. So in the case of our online bookstore, the domain is, well, selling books online.
Seems straightforward enough, but I'm guessing there's more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. Within that seemingly simple domain, we have various subdomains, distinct areas of expertise and functionality that make up the overall business.
So it's like breaking down the bookstore into like different sections, like fiction, nonfiction, children's books.
It's similar, but instead of focusing on the types of books, we're looking at the underlying business processes. Think shipping, billing, inventory management, recommendations, personalization, and so on. Each of these represents a subdomain.
So it's more like the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes the bookstore run smoothly. Got it. But why is it so important to divide the domain into these subdomains? Can't we just treat it as one big thing?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of why strategic DDD is so powerful. By dividing the domain into subdomains, we can start to prioritize our efforts and resources. We can identify which areas are truly essential to the business and which ones are less critical.
So not all subdomains are created equal.
Exactly. Strategic DDD helps us distinguish between three types of subdomains: core, supportive, and generic.
Okay, I'm ready for a breakdown. What makes each of these subdomains unique, and why should we care about the differences?
Let's start with the core domain. This is the heart of the business, its unique value proposition, the thing that sets it apart from the competition. In the SpaceX analogy, the core domain would be their reusable rockets. That's what gives them a major edge.
So for our online bookstore, what might be their core domain? Is it their vast selection of books, their competitive prices, or something else entirely?
It could be any of those things, but it's more likely something less obvious. Maybe it's their personalized recommendation engine, their super efficient delivery service, or a unique subscription model that caters to specific reading preferences. The key is that it's something that truly differentiates them from other online bookstores.
Okay, so we've got the core domain, the MVP, the star of the show. What about the other subdomains? Are they just background noise?
Not at all. Supportive subdomains are necessary for the business to function, but they're not necessarily unique or a competitive advantage. Things like inventory management, customer support, or even the website's search functionality would fall into this category.
So you're saying build them well, but they're not going to win any awards for innovation. What about the really basic stuff that every business needs, like billing or payment processing?
Those are usually considered generic subdomains. Often it makes more sense to buy an off-the-shelf solution for these rather than building them from scratch. Why reinvent the wheel when someone else has already done it well?
Right. Focus on what makes you special and outsource the rest. Makes perfect sense. But how do we actually go about discovering these subdomains in the first place? It feels like it could be a bit of a guessing game.
Well, that's where the training course provides some incredibly helpful heuristics, practical rules of thumb to guide us. We could look at the organizational structure of the company. Are there separate teams for shipping, billing, recommendations? That's a strong clue.
Makes sense. Different teams often indicate different areas of expertise and, therefore, different subdomains.
Another heuristic is to pay close attention to the language different experts use. Does the word book mean the same thing to someone in shipping as it does to someone in marketing? If not, that's a sign of distinct subdomains with their own unique jargon.
So, like a shipping person might talk about the book's weight and dimensions, while the marketing folks are focused on the title, author, and genre.
Exactly. By listening carefully and observing how people talk about their work, we can uncover those subtle boundaries between subdomains. And this is where collaboration becomes crucial. We need to involve both technical and business experts in this discovery process.
It's all about clear communication and a shared understanding, which brings us back to the essence of strategic DDD.
Precisely. And here's where things get even more interesting. Domains and subdomains are not static. What's core to a business today might become generic tomorrow, and vice versa.
So how do we account for this evolution when defining our subdomains? Wouldn't that make the whole process incredibly complex?
It does add a layer of complexity, but that's the reality of the business world. Think about how online bookstores have had to adapt to the rise of ebooks and audiobooks. What was once a niche offering has become essential, and those subdomains have likely evolved significantly.
Oh, totally. What was once a simple download button now involves complex digital rights management, personalized reading experiences, and integration with various devices. That definitely adds a whole new dimension to the subdomain.
Exactly. And this is why strategic DDD emphasizes understanding not just the current state, but also the potential future state of the business. We need to anticipate how the domain might evolve and design our software in a way that allows for flexibility and adaptability.
So it's not just about solving the problems of today, but also about creating a foundation that can handle the challenges of tomorrow.
Precisely. And that's where a powerful technique called event storming comes in. It's a collaborative workshop designed to rapidly map out the problem space and uncover those hidden complexities and potential areas of evolution.
Event storming. Sounds intriguing. Is it like a brainstorming session on steroids?
In a way, yes, but it's much more structured and visual, making it incredibly effective. Imagine getting all the key stakeholders, developers, business experts, UX designers into a room with a giant wall covered in sticky notes.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Lots of colorful sticky notes, people buzzing around. What happens next?
The first phase is all about chaotic exploration. Everyone writes down events that happen in the business process, using past tense to emphasize that these are things that have already occurred.
So instead of saying customer places an order, you'd say customer placed an order. Why the emphasis on the past tense?
It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. By focusing on events that have already happened, we ground ourselves in the reality of the business process. It helps avoid getting bogged down in hypotheticals or wishful thinking.
I see. So it's about understanding the as-is before we jump into the to-be. Makes sense. So what kind of events might we see on those sticky notes for our online bookstore?
You might have events like customer browsed the catalog, customer added a book to their cart, payment was processed, order was shipped, customer left a review. The possibilities are endless.
Wow, it's amazing how many individual events make up even a seemingly simple online transaction. I'm starting to see how this visual representation could help uncover those hidden complexities.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. Once everyone has had a chance to contribute their individual ideas, the group comes together to arrange the events chronologically on the wall, creating a visual timeline of the entire business process.
So now we have this giant, colorful map of everything that happens, from a customer landing on the website to a book arriving at their doorstep.
Precisely. This visual representation is incredibly powerful. It makes it easier to spot gaps in the process, identify potential bottlenecks, and even uncover hidden assumptions that people hadn't realized they were making.
It's like those spot the difference puzzles, but for business processes. You suddenly start seeing things you never noticed before. What happens next in the event storming process? Do we just stare at this massive timeline and hope for a breakthrough?
Not quite. This is where the real magic of event storming comes in. We start asking probing questions about each event, digging deeper into the why and the how. And we do this in a very specific way by telling the story from the end.
Hold on, from the end. Why would you start at the finish line? Wouldn't it make more sense to follow the natural flow of the process?
It might seem counterintuitive, but there's a powerful reason for this. By starting with the final event and working our way backward, we force ourselves to think critically about each step and uncover hidden details or dependencies.
So it's like rewinding a movie and asking, okay, how did we get to this point? What happened before that and before that?
Exactly. It shifts people's thinking from a passive to an active mode, forcing them to really analyze each step and uncover hidden details or dependencies.
That's fascinating. I can see how that would lead to some aha moments. What kind of questions might we ask during this reverse storytelling process?
We might ask things like, what had to happen before this event could occur? What are the possible alternative paths? Who or what triggered this event? What information was needed to make this decision?
It's like playing a mental game of reverse dominoes. Each question leads to another, uncovering a chain of interconnected events.
Precisely. And by the end of this process, we have a much deeper understanding of the business process than we could have ever achieved through traditional methods like interviews or documentation reviews.
This is all starting to sound like a detective's evidence board, but for software development.
That's a great analogy. And just like a detective needs to identify the culprit, we need to identify the problems and opportunities in our business process. Now that we have this comprehensive map, we can start brainstorming areas for improvement.
I'm guessing that's where all those pink sticky notes with question marks come into play? The ones we use to mark those hot spots of uncertainty or disagreement?
You got it. Those hotspots represent areas of uncertainty, potential bottlenecks, or places where things could be done more efficiently. And to make sure we're focusing on the most critical issues, we can use a simple dot voting system to prioritize the problems and opportunities we've identified.
So by the end of the event storming session, we have a clear picture of the process, a shared understanding of the problems, and a prioritized list of areas to focus on. That's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. And it's a much more engaging and efficient way to gather information than traditional methods like endless meetings or dense documentation. Everyone is involved, everyone contributes, and everyone walks away with a sense of ownership over the outcome.
I can't wait to dive into a specific example of event storming in action and see how all these concepts come together. But first, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll explore how this technique was used to uncover some surprising insights for an online course platform.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to digging into the details of that case study. It's a great example of how event storming can bring clarity to even the most complex processes and set the stage for building truly effective software solutions.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of strategic DDD.
We're ready to take you behind the scenes of an actual event storming session, see how it helps uncover hidden complexities and potential opportunities for, well, innovation.
You mentioned a case study involving an online course platform. Can you paint a picture of the situation they were facing?
Absolutely. They had a platform that was gaining in popularity, but they were starting to experience some growing pains. Their existing system was struggling to keep up with increasing demand, and they knew they needed to make some changes.
Sounds like a classic scenario for a company that's on the verge of a breakthrough, but also facing potential bottlenecks if they don't adapt quickly.
Exactly. They realized they needed a more robust and scalable solution, but they weren't sure where to start. They had ideas for new features and improvements, but they lack a shared understanding of the current process and its pain points.
So how did they decide that event storming was the right tool for the job? Was it something they'd tried before, or was it a new approach for them?
It was actually a new approach they were eager to try. They had heard about its effectiveness in uncovering hidden complexities and facilitating collaboration, so they decided to give it a go.
And who did they bring to the table for this event storming session? Was it just the developers, or did they involve a wider range of stakeholders?
They were smart enough to recognize the value of diverse perspectives. They invited a cross-functional team that included the company owner, the lead editor, the editors responsible for individual courses,
Mm.
the developers, the product owner, and even some folks from customer support.
Wow. That's a pretty impressive lineup. It sounds like they were serious about getting everyone on the same page.
Absolutely. They cleared out a large space, stocked up on sticky notes and markers, and were ready to dive into the chaotic world of event storming.
I can almost feel the energy in the room. So walk us through those early stages. What were some of the first events they started capturing on the sticky notes?
They began by focusing on the core workflow of their platform. Events like course topic was selected, editor was assigned, course outline was created, video segment was recorded, transcript was received from transcription service, started populating the wall.
It's amazing how many steps are involved in something that seems so simple from the outside. It's like those time-lapse videos of a plant growing. You only see the final result, but there's so much happening beneath the surface.
Exactly. And as they started adding more events, they began to see patterns and connections emerge. They realized that some steps were highly dependent on others, while others could happen in parallel. This visual representation helped them understand the flow of information and identified potential bottlenecks.
I bet that sparked some interesting discussions. Were there any moments of, like, wait, that's not how I thought it worked?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most valuable aspects of event storming is that it forces people to confront their assumptions and challenge their mental models. For example, there was a debate about whether course was uploaded to the platform happened before or after a marketing campaign was launched.
That's a great example of a potential misalignment that could have had real consequences. If marketing starts promoting a course that's not yet available, it could lead to frustrated customers and a damaged reputation.
Precisely. And by surfacing this issue early on through event storming, they could address it before it became a problem.
So how did they resolve that particular debate? Did they come to a consensus or did they agree to disagree?
They acknowledged that the current process wasn't clear, and they used a pink sticky note to mark it as a hot spot, an area of uncertainty or disagreement that needed further discussion.
It's like those warning flags you see on a hiking trail. They don't tell you exactly what's ahead, but they alert you to potential hazards. So what happened next in the event storming session? Did they continue mapping out the process chronologically, or did they shift gears?
They continued adding events and refining the timeline, but they also started asking those probing questions we talked about earlier, the ones that force you to think critically about each step.
We're talking about the storytelling from the end technique, where you start with the final event and work your way backwards.
Exactly. This is where the real aha moments started happening. By reversing the flow, they uncovered hidden details and dependencies they hadn't even considered before.
Can you give us an example of a specific insight they gained through this reverse storytelling?
One interesting discovery was related to course feedback. They realized that the current process only allowed for feedback once the entire course was completed. This meant that if there were issues with early modules, students had to wait until the very end to share their thoughts.
That doesn't sound very user-friendly. It's like having to read an entire book before you can tell the author what you think.
Exactly. And by working backward from the course feedback was received event, they realized they could introduce feedback loops at various points throughout the course. This would allow students to share their thoughts in a more timely manner and give the course creators valuable insights for improvement.
That's a great example of how event storming can lead to actionable improvements, not just theoretical insights.
Absolutely. And as they continued to delve deeper into the process, they uncovered other areas where they could enhance the learning experience, streamline workflows, and even create new features.
I'm starting to see how this process goes beyond just understanding the current state. It also sparks ideas for innovation and improvement.
Precisely. By mapping out the entire process, identifying pain points, and brainstorming solutions, they were able to create a roadmap for building a truly exceptional course platform.
This is all incredibly insightful, but I'm curious to know how this specific example connects back to those core concepts of strategic DDD we discussed earlier.
That's a great question. Remember how we talked about the importance of identifying the core domain, the heart of the business, its unique value proposition?
Of course. We even brainstormed some potential core domains for our online bookstore example.
Right. Well, the event storming session for the course platform helped them pinpoint their core domain as well.
Okay, I'm all ears. How did they arrive at that conclusion? Was it a sudden realization, or was it a gradual process?
It was a combination of factors, but one key element was the sheer number of events and hotspots related to the student learning experience. They realized that their platform wasn't just about delivering content. It was about creating a personalized and engaging learning journey for each student.
So their core domain wasn't just online courses. It was something more nuanced and specific.
Exactly. It was about understanding individual learning styles, providing targeted feedback, and creating a sense of community and support among students.
I can see how that focus on the student experience could be a huge differentiator in a crowded market. It's not just about the content, it's about the way it's delivered and the impact it has.
Precisely. And this realization had a profound impact on their strategic decisions going forward. They knew they needed to invest heavily in features and functionalities that supported this core domain.
This is really highlighting the value of taking that strategic step back and looking at the bigger picture. It's not just about solving isolated problems, it's about understanding how those problems fit into the overall business strategy.
Absolutely. And that's why event storming is such a powerful tool. It's not just about mapping out a process, it's about uncovering the underlying business goals and identifying the areas where technology can have the greatest impact.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into strategic domain-driven design. We've explored the core concepts, witnessed the magic of event storming in action, and now we're ready to see how those insights translate into real-world solutions.
It's time to put on our architect hats and start building the blueprint for a software system that truly aligns with the business goals and the needs of its users.
I'm excited to see how we go from that massive wall of sticky notes to a structured and actionable plan.
Well, the first step is to revisit those events we captured during the event storming session and start grouping them into meaningful clusters that represent our subdomains. Remember those heuristics we discussed earlier?
Absolutely. Things like organizational structure, language, business value, those clues that help us identify the distinct areas of expertise within the domain.
Precisely. In the course platform example, they started by looking for the most obvious boundaries. They noticed that marketing was a fairly independent department with its own processes and concerns. Their primary interaction with the course platform was receiving course information once it was ready for promotion.
So a clear separation there sounds like a classic generic subdomain, something essential but not unique to their business.
Right. They also identified accounting as another generic subdomain. Their focus was primarily on invoices and financial transactions, regardless of the specific courses being sold.
Makes sense. Those functionalities are fairly standardized across different businesses, so it's often more efficient to use existing solutions.
Exactly. But things got a bit more interesting when they started analyzing the events related to subscriptions. Even though there weren't as many sticky notes in this area, it was clear that subscriptions were a critical part of their business model and a potential source of complexity.
Especially with those pink hotspot sticky notes we saw earlier, indicating areas of uncertainty or disagreement.
Right. Through the event storming discussions, they realized that there were two distinct perspectives on subscriptions. The customer support team focused on defining and managing the various subscription plans.
So things like setting prices, determining the number of users allowed per plan, offering different tiers of access to content, those kinds of administrative tasks.
Precisely. But from the customer's point of view, the subscription was all about payment, activation, and access to the courses.
Totally different sets of concerns and actions, even though they're both under the umbrella of subscriptions.
And that's a key indicator that we're dealing with two distinct subdomains: subscription plans and customer subscriptions. Changes made to one might not directly impact the other, so it makes sense to treat them separately.
It's like realizing that the bookstore's cafe needs its own management system, even though it's still part of the overall bookstore experience.
That's a great analogy. They also made an interesting discovery related to the concept of the course itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued. It seems like course would be a pretty straightforward concept. What nuances did they uncover there?
Well, at first glance, it seemed like everything revolved around a single concept of a course. But as they delved deeper, they realized that the course meant different things depending on the stage of the customer journey.
I'm starting to see where this is going. We talked about the importance of language and how different experts use the same words to mean different things.
Exactly. In this case, they noticed that before a customer enrolled in a course, the focus was on discovery. It was about browsing the catalog, reading descriptions, watching previews, treating the course as a static entity.
So at that stage, the course is more like a product on display, waiting to be chosen by the customer.
Precisely. But once the customer enrolls and starts interacting with the course material, the focus shifts to personalization. It's about tracking their progress, providing feedback, and tailoring the learning experience to their individual needs.
So it's no longer a static entity. It becomes a dynamic and evolving process, unique to each student.
Exactly. And this realization led them to break down the course concept into two distinct subdomains: course catalog and customer course progress.
I can see how that distinction would have a significant impact on how they design the software. They would need different functionalities and data structures for each subdomain.
Absolutely. And this is where strategic DDD really shines. It helps us avoid those one-size-fits-all solutions that often lead to clunky and inefficient software.
Now, before we get too deep into the technical details, I want to circle back to that crucial step of identifying the core domain. How did the course platform team use the insights from event storming to pinpoint that heart of their business?
Remember those pink sticky notes they used to mark hotspots, areas of uncertainty, disagreement, or potential improvement?
Of course, we talked about how they used dot voting to prioritize those hotspots and guide their focus.
Right. Well, it turned out that a significant number of those hotspots were related to subscription management, particularly the customer-facing aspects.
Not surprising, given the complexities we just discussed. It's a critical area that often involves multiple touch points and potential for friction.
Exactly. And this, combined with their desire to create a truly engaging and personalized learning experience, pointed to customer subscriptions as a strong candidate for their core domain.
So they're not just selling courses, they're building a learning platform that's tailored to individual needs and goals, with subscriptions as the key enabler.
Precisely. And this realization had a profound impact on their strategic decisions. They knew they needed to invest heavily in features and functionalities that supported this core domain.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But before we move on to solutions, I want to revisit our online bookstore example. Remember that thought-provoking question we posed earlier about how they could differentiate their subscription service?
I'm eager to hear what you came up with. Did any of the insights from the course platform example spark any new ideas?
Absolutely. Inspired by their focus on personalization and community, I started thinking about how the online bookstore could create a more engaging and interactive experience for their subscribers.
Intriguing. Tell me more.
What if they went beyond just offering discounts and started incorporating social elements into their subscription model?
I like where you're going with this. Social interaction is a powerful motivator, especially for book lovers, who often crave a sense of connection and shared discovery.
Exactly. So what if they created an online book club feature exclusively for subscribers? Imagine curated reading lists, author Q&A sessions, discussion forums, maybe even virtual meetups with fellow bookworms.
That's brilliant. It leverages their existing platform, creates a sense of community, and offers something truly unique that you wouldn't get from just buying discounted books.
Exactly, and it aligns perfectly with their core domain, which we identified as personalized recommendations and a seamless reading experience.
It's a fantastic example of how strategic DDD can help us move beyond the obvious solutions and create something truly valuable and differentiating.
It's about understanding the deeper needs of the users and finding creative ways to meet them using technology as an enabler.
Precisely. And that's the power of strategic domain-driven design. It's not just about building software, it's about solving real problems, creating meaningful experiences, and ultimately driving business success.
This has been an incredible journey. We've delved into the world of strategic DDD, witnessed the magic of event storming, and explored how these concepts can be applied to create innovative and impactful software solutions.
And along the way, we've learned that it's not just about the code. It's about understanding the why behind the software, speaking the language of the business, and fostering collaboration between technical and domain experts.
So for all you deep divers out there, whether you're building the next groundbreaking app or simply seeking to improve your understanding of the software development process, remember these key takeaways.
Embrace the power of strategic thinking. Don't just solve problems, understand them. Break down complexity into manageable subdomains, and never underestimate the value of collaboration and shared understanding.
Go forth and conquer those complex challenges one subdomain at a time, and always remember to keep the user at the heart of your solutions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights that will help you navigate the exciting world of software development.